And here we go, full screen. Sweet.
Okay. And everybody can hear me clearly, loud enough, not too much
Yes.
Belgian sexy accent?
Almost
Okay,
enough.
good.
Almost enough. Like a
All right.
warm waffle.
Good, good, good. So, well, first of all, everyone, let me start with thanking Toby, John, and Kelly for inviting me to speak at this event about deeper connections, because human connectivity, compassion, and belonging are very dear to me. Now, I must warn you all, this presentation is going to feel like a roller coaster ride. It might overwhelm you. So do fasten your seatbelts, but don't worry. If you lose track during my talk, at the end of each key part, I will summarize the key message for you. So at the end of the presentation, you will have an idea on why you feel the way you feel about your life, and also how to bend your reality in the way you want it. So, are you ready? Good.
Bring it on.
Ready.
Okay. I did 2 masters, one in genetic engineering and one in environmental technologies. I had a natural inclination to languages and human sciences, so I kind of decided to study hard sciences because I always wanted to challenge myself in life. Now, in mathematics, I failed my first exam and I felt bad because the professor had the reputation for failing anyone who couldn't pass the first part of the exam. This was the mathematical exercises. So you can imagine how nervous I was sitting in front of him for the second part of the exam, the theoretical physics. So he was kind of frowning and he looked at the paper I gave him and he said, "What are you trying to explain here? Why did you write this? This is not what we had learned." I kind of was apologized and said, "Well, I forgot what we learned. I'm not so good at remembering things. So I just wrote my own thoughts." So he said, "Okay, explain me your logic." So I started to explain how I was intrigued how mathematics could help us understand physics in ways I first could not imagine. But then when I started to think about similarities between the movement of atoms and vibrations, and then start to use matrices to figure out how different physical dimensional relationships are related, then things started to make sense to me. So I started to see the logic of how mathematics translates into the physical world and how mathematics can be used to understand physics. It kind of became a long conversation. And at the end, the professor told me, "You failed the mathematical calculation, so I can't let you pass." Because an engineer that makes mistakes in his calculations builds bridges that collapse and people will die. So I felt devastated. If you were to promise me that you would not build bridges, but that you would find people who can build all the bridges that you have in your mind, then I would give you the maximum score. Because my see bridges nobody else can see. And the world also needs that. So I still feel grateful for that professor today, as he not only was able to see my weakness and my strength, but he also empowered me to feel confident going forward. And he gave me practical advice on how I would have to work with other people to become successful. The first year, I almost ended last in class. The last year, I ended first in my year. So 17 years ago, after an initial career of 10 years in Belgium and a serious motorbike accident, I read a book about China. I got intrigued about how different everything was from my worldviews. And I wanted to understand it. And I got a hunch that I had to move to China to experience that for real. So people thought I was crazy because I wasn't sent there as an expat for a temporary assignment. I just sold my house and then came over to try my luck. Basically, I told all my friends, "Come and have a party at my home. If there's anything in the house that you like and you can carry, just take it. I'm going to come back. If it's not broken, then please give it back." But that's 2 years after I arrived in China. Then my Chinese colleagues said I was crazy because then I suddenly decided to move to remote Western China, even remote for them, to open a new office for the company. And again, 2 years later, my friends said I was crazy because I was leaving my job in the middle of the global financial crisis to set up a new business from scratch for a Fortune 500 company. Then 2 years later, they said I was crazy because I left my new corporate job to start an environmental technology platform, a social platform for entrepreneurs. But in 1.5 years, we reached 25,000 people. We did 35 projects and we created 5 new companies. That was fun. So needless to say, 2 years later, when I decided to start a cocoa company in Africa, people again thought I was crazy. And the following 6 more years were just as crazy with 3 more changes. Working as an entrepreneur for DuPont, then becoming the only foreigner working in a Chinese environmental consultancy, and then to eventually arrive where I am today. So I guess part of me must indeed be crazy. But I take that as a compliment, because most significant change in the world always is inspired by people that were originally considered crazy. So the key that I want to share with all of this is that these decisions always came from an intuitive hunch, and acting upon these hunches always energized me, not only giving me a great career, but also giving me a great life. Here are some photo impressions. You can see me doing standing meditation, bathing in ice water, doing the Wim Hof method. And at the age of 51, I still feel as young as I look in that big chair. So you can my son, some pictures, having fun, doing projects globally, working with the European Chamber of Commerce to improve business cooperation between China and Europe, speaking at the annual sustainability event of Mercedes-Benz. Anyway, the constant throughout my career was always pioneering businesses and building teams. So let me go to the topic of today. How do knowledge and wisdom relate? Any idea? Well, in the West, we use the approach of science to grow knowledge. This means when we discover something, we first try to understand it, then describe it, and then find a way to control the process to repeat it. Then we have proof that the scientific model is correct. Then and only then it is real. Now, in the East, we use the approach of to gain knowledge. We try something, and if it has a good effect, we try it more. And by exactly it works, but proof comes from experience. So knowledge is passed on via approaches, based on accumulated experience, which is a never-ending story of fine-tuning. And so is science. So every model, East or West, requires an upgrade as soon as the old model can't explain new findings. For example, quantum mechanics is a beautiful one, replacing Newton mechanics when this became outdated. Now, wisdom comes from knowing how to implement the knowledge. Wisdom is held and practiced by the doctors of modern science in the West and by the masters of ancient knowledge in the East. So I come from the world of genetics, quantum mechanics, psychology. In China, I started practicing standing meditation. And over time, suddenly I started feeling energy flow in my body. And I saw my body health started to improve. And I started to get intuitive insights, seemingly coming out of nowhere. So the scientist in me immediately got intrigued. Now, my Chinese wife started to introduce me to some teachers in the Huangdi Neijing, that's called the Book of the Yellow Emperor, and the I Ching, that's in English, the Book of Change. Now, these masters, they seem to know things about me that I could not understand how they could possibly know that. So I started bombarding them with questions. Most of the teachers ignored my questions. And one of the old Chinese masters instead told me that if I wanted to understand more, that I should go back and do more standing meditation. At first, I thought he was making a joke, but he was very peculiar about how to do it and to keep doing it. So a little bit like the Karate Kid story, wax on, wax off, if you know that. So I did it. I couldn't make sense of it, some of the explanations I was getting. I kind of got frustrated and I interpreted their vague explanations as a refusal to share with me the details. But they simply didn't understand why this foreigner was wasting so much energy in trying to understand what was so simple to do. because words hardly could be able to explain it quickly anyway. So I believe this thinking actually is reflected in the Chinese culture and language, the way people think and talk, and which in the West we tend often to label as ambiguous. But later I decided that this kind of label only shows our lack of understanding, because the accumulated knowledge indeed takes many years to learn and has many interpretations. But the implementation indeed is quite often and simple. Things don't have to be complicated. So I couldn't explain it, but I also couldn't ignore what I experienced. And, you know, relinquishing the need to understand why and how things work is a very difficult thing for Westerners to do. So nevertheless, I still wanted to understand, so I reverted back to my roots in science to see if I could make any sense of this. So let's look at a few things we know from recent science. We know that everything in our bodies is dynamic, even at the level of the expression of our DNA. We used to think that our DNA determines who we are. Now that's not the whole truth, and actually is only a small part of the truth. Epigenetics now show that external factors can influence which part of our own DNA is expressed in which way by producing which kind of enzymes. And then this in turn determines how our body gets sick or how it heals, and even how your body ages, whether your cells rejuvenate, whether they develop cancer or repair themselves, etc. And external factors can be anything. They can be chemicals that you get exposed to, food that you eat, but even your emotions, as these emotions determine the biochemistry in your blood via your hormones. And hence, even your self-perception is key in this, because your self-perception determines your emotions, and this determines your level of happiness or frustration, and hence also determines your body chemistry and your expression of your DNA. And more, even our behaviors are strongly impacted by the DNA of the bacteria in our gut, communicating with our body via peptides, which is an example for what causes anxiety and depression. You thought it was you having the depression? So, key to remember here is that negativity and fear are the most damaging emotions to the body, and that compassion and love are the most healing. Isn't that fascinating? We now know that we are like a complex interactive operating system made up of mind, body, conscious and subconscious. In India and China, we see models that talk about the chakras, the meridians, energy fields, and based on that, all kinds of treatments that talk about balancing yin and yang. In Western science, we have a model, you can see a little bit more, voila. In the Western science, we have a model that in fact is similar and that distinguishes between two opposing systems, the sympathetic and parasympathetic systems, with the sympathetic system controlling our fight or flight response, and the parasympathetic system controlling our rest and digest response. Now, previously, the mechanisms of these systems were believed to be controlled only by the unconscious. But more recently, we are discovering that some of these processes in our body, such as the immune system, which were not considered to be under conscious control, actually can be controlled. And the biological processes may still take place unconsciously, but what we are now starting to understand is that the mind can consciously be engaged to influence these processes via the unconscious. One well-known example of this is the Wim Hof method, like what you saw in the beginning with ice bathing, and where, for example, breath and cold exposure are consciously controlled in such a way as to rapidly increase energy in the body, so that one can resist bathing in ice without feeling cold, and also that one can reduce inflammation and even heal autoimmune diseases. See? Okay, so how does energy and immunity relate? Now, key to understand this are the mitochondria that regulate both energy generation in the cell but at the same time also regulate parts of the immune reaction in the cell. Now, if you look where the mitochondria come from, it makes perfect sense, because mitochondria are small organelles in the cells that in fact are a relic of bacteria that entered the cell millions of years ago in some form of symbiosis to help these cells create their own energy. So when they entered the cells, they had to suppress the cellular defense mechanism, the immune system of the host cell, in order to be accepted inside and to then perform their function of creating energy for the cell. So they became part of the human system. Now, the most recent time I used this knowledge to address an issue in my body was February last year, to heal my hand from a carpal tunnel syndrome. So basically, this is a tendon which gets stuck and you can't move your thumb anymore. It's very painful. So actually, in 3 weeks, I got rid of something that I had been suffering from for almost half a year. Because before, nor Western nor Chinese traditional medicine helped. And my friend's surgeon even was saying the only way to solve it was to get like a small cut in the tendons in my hand, but I couldn't accept it because I had my way of healing myself, but my method wasn't working. So I was frustrated. I couldn't understand why, till I figured out in detail and was able to do it right. And then it only took me 3 weeks to get it done. I will explain later how it works. So the key thing here to remember is that the mind, via the subconscious, has more power than we thought. We now realize that both energy creation and immunity can be consciously influenced. And as I mentioned earlier, we know that through our emotions, attitudes, the mind unconsciously influences our body processes. It's therefore very important to choose your perceptions in life wisely, as inner conflicts might, for example, cause autoimmune issues. And it keeps getting more interesting. Our nervous system comes in 3 parts, with the brain, the heart, and the gut. And they are connected via the central big nerve through your spine, which is called the vagus nervus. Now, which thing you think controls which part? It turns out there's more communication from your heart and your gut to your brain than the other way around. So your heart is more influencing your brain and your gut is more influencing your brain. It's not what you think is influencing your body. Now, our nervous system works via synapses that pass on the signals in our nerves, in our brain. And we used to think this was just an electrical exchange, but then found out there is also a release of chemicals that have longer effects. And for example, acetylcholine is a very interesting example of this, as it labels which neurons will be rewired during sleep in the sub and unconscious state. Now, this rewiring is the basis of neuroplasticity, the ability of the brain to form and reorganize synaptic connections based on learning and experience, and is also the basis for changing belief systems, where many people talk about. Now, you may remember from your physics classes that electrical currents cause electromagnetic fields. We can now measure these fields, we can read them, and we can, with biotech feedback, even use them to operate artificial limbs or to get computers to write text merely via our thoughts. That's how detailed it is. But here comes the most fascinating stuff. We now know that quantum tunneling is happening everywhere, even in nature and in our body, in plants, for example, during photosynthesis, and even again in the synapses of our nervous system, more specifically in the microtubuli. Now, what does that mean? According to quantum mechanics, listen carefully, quantum states only can be determined by observation, and they are actually created through observation. That means that before observation, only potential realities exist, meaning that there is nothing real until the moment it has been observed. Now, let me tell you something fascinating. Scientists have discovered that anesthesia, which makes you unconscious, also stops the quantum tunneling in our brain. Stuart Hameroff and Sir Roger Penrose derived theory is that our conscious observation is what creates our reality. Awareness creates reality. Now, I want to let you listen to the vibration of the mind.
This is the sound of microtubules inside a neuron singing.
Can somebody confirm that you hear it?
Takes about a minute and a half. So you can see here he's speaking at the frequency. This is down converted because it would be too fast to actually hear. So this gives the idea that there are vibrational resonances going on inside neurons due to the microtubule. So these are measuring from the microtubule bundles inside neurons, and these triplets occur every several orders of magnitude. Now the high-pitched one. Hang on. I'm not sure what this really means, but it's kind of nice, and a lot of people really like it. But it's basically what's going on inside our neurons all the time due to these vibrational resonances. And one point I want to make is that consciousness is more like music than computation. Okay, so that's going on.
All right. So the first time I heard it, I was speechless because I felt like I was listening to the sound of the reality. Now, I don't want it deeper. I want to say, look at quantum entanglement and look at the holographic nature of the universe to understand the physical nature of what Carl Gustav Jung calls the collective subconscious. Jung's insight about the collective subconscious came after studying the Chinese Old Book of Chains. While doing standing meditation and while working with these teachers, it finally made me understand how the Chinese Book of Chains works. So the key thing to remember here is that your brain can be rewired and that your subconscious mind is a very powerful tool that can help you to understand the nature of things and to shape your own reality. Okay, we're almost there. Please hold on for one more slide with some theory. Electromagnetism and quantum mechanics, they explain many things, that charisma or whether a feeling of somebody looking over your shoulder or whatever, but also people impacting reality. So your nervous system has a frequency variance that changes with your state, and your body works as an antenna that can emit and receive these frequencies. You can become sad from somebody being sad, even sometimes not being connected with a person. Now, this, for example, has been experimented with. For example, a group of 1,000 people, experienced meditators, meditating with an aim to determine whether this could effectively reduce crime rates in a city like New York in statistically relevant ways. You know what? It worked. Can you just imagine that? Now, this appears to be stronger with lower brain frequencies. For example, when the brain frequency lowers from normal wake beta state with waves ranging like 12 to 30, or in high concentration, which is still more than 30. But when you go to relaxed alpha state, you go to 8 to 12. When you go to deep meditation state or unconscious, like light sleep, it's 4 to 7, or deep sleep in delta, it's even lower. Now, even the Earth has its own frequencies. These are caused by, amongst others, lightning and electrical currencies and radiations fluctuating in the atmosphere around the globe. Now, one of the most fascinating details is that when people are feeling in bliss in meditation between the conscious and the subconscious state, their brain resonates around 8 Hertz, which coincidentally or not is similar to the frequency of the Earth's own natural electromagnetic field, the Schumann frequency at 7.83 Hertz. Now, what does that mean? How we relate to our planet? Now, the key thing to remember here is that you, via your subconscious, when your brain is in alpha, theta, or delta, that you can interact more effectively with others and shape your reality. You know, when my son found out that this is in fact similar to the Force in Star Wars, he also wanted to try out standing meditation. So anyway, I think this is enough background for today, because I could go on for hours like this. This is my passion. And I'm also very much aware that a lot of what I mentioned just now can take you hours to study in detail if you want to figure it out. And my mom actually used to tell me as a child, Johnny, it's good you ask questions once, and you can even ask them 2 or 3 times. But can you please stop asking after 2 or 3 times, because you'll get crazy, I'm getting crazy. So this is also, in fact, what the masters were telling me. So without trying to understand everything, I used the Chinese way to try not explain too much, but to simply develop a 3-step approach that can be implemented based on my own experience. As an engineer, I often had to do this in my work. It's something that I like and that I'm used to do. So the 3-step approach explains the 3 critical steps that over the years I figured out that you need to improve your intuition, to empower others, and to shape your reality. And I believe this has been a guidance and a success factor in my career. Because every time when I was in flow, when I was following a hunch, serendipities just started happening, as if the universe was or as if my life was a just-in-time delivery. Now, the steps are quite simple. The first critical step is just to know yourself and to learn to listen to your inner voice. This will bring a certain degree of inner peace. Without this, none of the other steps work. And this, for example, is also the reason why in February last year, it didn't work for like months to heal my thumb, because my inner voice was telling me that I wasn't following the right path in my career. I wasn't doing the right thing in my life. And I normally always follow my subconscious, my dreams. At that time, I was refusing because I felt I couldn't do this because it was taking a risk. But then again, from the moment I did it, it's changed. So one methodology that I did not mention here, but which in fact is my favorite, is the individuation process by Carl Gustav Jung. So anyway, allegorically, I like to call this step seeing the light. It's like getting insight via your subconscious. Now, the second step is to increase energy in your body. And mostly this can be done via some of the ancient techniques, such as standing meditation, but that also can be partially done via different, more modern techniques, such as breathing techniques, for example. For example, breathing out slowly lowers your brain frequency, which is important to put something in your subconscious in step 3. But breathing in deeply and fast increases your energy, which is important in step 2. And combining this with, for example, binaural sounds or rhythmic sounds or solfeggio frequencies even reinforces the effect. So allegorically, I like to say that this step increases the light that you got into a laser, powering it up. Now, the third step is working via your subconscious to use that accumulated energy for a specific purpose. And again, allegorically, I like to say it's aiming your laser at your objective. Now, in each step, different aspects are important. And this is just a simplified version that you see here. The roadmap for brain hacking. This is for personal use. Now, for each aspect, different methodologies can be used. And I only listed a few here. The complete roadmap actually covers like hundreds of different methodologies that you can use to achieve the same effect. I'll explain one case about the authenticity test in a few minutes. And for example, the Wim Hof method, I already explained earlier. And the Jose da Silva method, for example, teaches you how to consciously move your brain into the alpha and theta state to bring intentions into your subconscious. So I will also share some book titles at the end of the presentation so you can check it out for yourself. But the key thing here to remember is that these methodologies always work at the interface of the body and the mind, the conscious and the subconscious. So it's always playing between those two while implementing technologies or methodologies, I mean, that are most suitable for you, that you feel most comfortable with. Now, in a business context, we use similar methodologies. It's the same 3 steps, only in this case, we use it to improve business intuition. We use it to empower organizations with power planning. This is how you basically impact engaged teams with energy. And also to strive together for a massive transformational purpose. Now, time today is too short to go into detail, but I would still like to explain one step a bit more in detail, which is called the rapid strategic execution. So rapid strategic execution is a process that allows you to develop your business plan on the go while you are processing, adapting, consciously adapting and tracking and documenting your learning and actually engaging energetically, so that in 6 to 12 months time, you know where you stand with your business. You have de facto a business plan in pocket to present to investors with a clear vision and implementation plan, with overview of the assets that you have in your business, and with a credible track record, an inspiring, credible track record. The only thing you need to do is to formulate your purpose for needing to obtain an investment. Now, I'm almost nearing the end of my presentation, but I would like to ask you, do you know what you really desire? A simple tip is to follow your joy and to ask yourself, what is it that you really enjoy doing? The last 5 years, I realized, for example, that what gave me most satisfaction and joy in my life actually is to just figure out how things work and then share this with others, and then to empower and create impact through others. So allegorically, you can say that I like planting orchards of fruit and then quickly moving to the next orchard as soon as the fruit trees come out and leaving it to other people to pick the apples. Now, in a business context, this means that I like supporting businesses and entrepreneurs to make their ventures successful. So the last few years, I started to realize that working in a corporate, doing things that the corporate was wanting, not always aligned with what I wanted to do with my life and how I wanted to contribute. And this is what I wanted to make clear. The key thing to remember about authenticity. When you feel you're struggling with certain feelings of emptiness, unhappiness, or simply feeling unfulfillment, or even worse, you might have like an uncontrollable anger or a frustration, or you might be procrastinating, or you might have anxiety, depression, chronic diseases, autoimmune diseases. Just try the authenticity test, because often these symptoms in body or mind are related to inner conflicts between your conscious and your subconscious. And these are manifesting themselves via your body and mind. And your authenticity score will be in line with your level of happiness. You can try it out with your family members or with some friends and compare. So, do you know what you desire? Your subconscious. Rai Baghi is having his microphone on. Okay, so do you know what you desire? Because your subconscious lets you experience joy. It lets you experience joy when you are yourself, when you are doing what it is that you're supposed to do in your life. And for many people, this is a very tough question, because when you ask them what they really want, they don't know what really the answer. And this is because many have reached some form of autopilot in their life. Their inner voice has been silenced. And these people are candidates for a midlife crisis. or according to Carl Gustav Jung, unless they address their disconnect with themselves, they will die feeling unsatisfied and sometimes bitter, not having fulfilled their purpose, not having lived their lives. But those who are authentic, or those who during a midlife crisis are able to rediscover themselves, they have the second half of their lives, or any time in your life, to complete what Jung calls the individuation process. I mentioned it earlier. So that once completed, by the end of your life, you're going to be looking back at your life with a sense of fulfillment, having lived your life, the life that you were supposed to live. So what is it that you really desire? Is your desire coming from your inner values, or is it coming from outside expectations? For example, your desire of having a car or not having debt can be both internal and external. It can be your own, or it can be imposed by expectation from society or from others. So the next question then is, are you acting upon your desire to meet it? Because being authentic means acting upon your own desires. If you act upon your own desire, you will feel empowered because you are in alignment with your inner voice. Your dreams, for example, will be peaceful. Acting upon inauthentic desires or against your desires, you will feel demotivated, you will lose energy, it reduces your self-confidence, your inner power, and you start getting restless dreams. Sometimes you don't even know it because you don't remember your dreams. But you can peek in your dreams, and this is one of the methodologies, because it's important to understand what your subconscious is telling you. And if you don't remember them, and if you're unhappy and you have no idea, it's because you're not hearing your inner voice anymore. So on the other hand, being authentic and acting upon your true desires, even when they are challenging, will not drain your energy, because they actually allow you to grow, because you feel you're striving for what you want. And you may not be there yet, you may not be perfect yet, but actually you're getting closer, getting better, getting more perfect. And each time you make an incremental progress, you are rewiring your brain and you start behaving differently. People will notice difference and also react to you differently. And your confidence grows, your ability to empower grows, your energy grows. Your challenges are no longer a burden, but a path of growth. Now, it looks simple. Actually, it is simple. And yet, so many fail to do this, especially in today's world where there are so many opinions, expectations, impressions, and with people's minds being bombarded with negative news instead of positive inspiration and mindfulness. So I made a tool to find out how aware you are of your own authenticity and how much you are acting upon it. I will share this after the presentation. But here are a few interesting books that I would like to share to check out for those who want to do some reading. I also definitely recommend to check out this YouTube video because it's the longest research ever done by Harvard, and it really is just revealing what is making people happy, but it really is revealing. I would like to end with one single key message in this whole presentation, which actually is nicely summarized in this quote by Carl Gustav Jung. It says, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate." Of Carl Gustav Jung. Now, Johnny Broas is going to add something to that. As soon as you make your conscious unconscious, you will start shaping your reality. So here are my contact details. I would like to say, do reach out to me if you want my help or have any questions. I'm always happy to help. I will share the authenticity test, also some other tools that I have. If you are interested in personal or business coaching to shape your reality, contact me for a coaching compatibility test, because this is important. During a call, we will find out if our energies match and whether I can genuinely, passionately engage in your goals. And also from a business perspective, whether I can really help you create value so that it makes sense for you to invest in my support. But one promise I always make is that I will help you on your way, because superhumans care about deep connections. And if I can't help you myself, I will put you in contact with somebody else who can, or I'm just gonna put you in contact with Toby, who will do that for us. So this is the end of my presentation. I don't know how much time we have left. If we have a lot of time left, we could do the audacity test. Otherwise, we just could do some questions and answers. But
yeah, what I would say is, Johnny, if you finish your screen share, thanks so much for bringing this wisdom into our collective here. What I would love to do is just do a few minutes of Q&A, and then have 5 minutes at the end where John will speak about tomorrow and the next things coming up. So if you can stop the screen share, then we can see everyone other than myself, because my camera is messed up. But so if anybody has questions for Johnny, let's use these couple minutes.
I hope you survived the roller coaster ride, because I know it's a ride.
It was quite a crazy roller coaster, but you brought it home nicely. To be like, it all focuses on one thing, really, which is that we can create our own reality, and that the light essentially is inside us. The wisdom is inside us.
And it's a game to play. Life is really to be embraced, to be enjoyed, and to just go for it.
Yes, I saw Sherry unmuted herself, and then Saad seems to have a question as well. So if you want to cover these two.
Yeah, listening to you speak at the very beginning, wisdom versus knowledge. I work with community folks, people who don't necessarily have degrees and are working to improve their communities. And I always say that I work with community wisdom, and that these folks' life experience is what makes them experts in their work. And so hearing that very simple definition, wisdom versus knowledge, science versus experience, like, yes, that's exactly what I'm talking about. And really, helping people to bring out that wisdom is related to their authenticity based on their experiences. So yeah, just very powerful stuff. And I'm excited to try a coaching compatibility test with you. I'm at this place in my career where I've reached this level of expert, but it's like, whatever, I need to do something else. So I appreciate your journey of moving to the next thing based on your authenticity.
Yeah.
So thank you.
Get crazy every 2 years. It gets you somewhere.
Awesome. Saad, do you want to ask your question as well?
Johnny, thank you very much for the presentation. My first question, what's the name on the YouTube Harvard research?
I put the link in there, but I'm happy to share it in the WhatsApp group afterwards, so you can actually watch it there.
Okay, and my second question, it really rings in my ear when you say we make the unconscious conscious. Does that mean there's so much about ourselves we're just like not conscious about? Is it that journey? Like if I just like put so much work into it, I can remove all the shades or all the things that I'm not being able to see?
Yes. So the key thing is so many people don't even know they actually aren't conscious, because there's so many things happening in your life and body, but you can see the symptoms, right? So that one slide where I listed a whole bunch of symptoms going from behavior like procrastination to emotions like unhappiness or anger to diseases like autoimmune diseases, they all can be indications of unconscious. If you have a little level of consciousness, then you will be having this conversation already. But no matter you have it not at all, or you have it at a certain level, you can't get enough of it. Because once you start developing this so well, this is when serendipity starts happening. Everything becomes natural. I mean, you can ask the people in the network here, like how the last 2 months, for example, everything started just happening. And this is not a coincidence, because the right people start reaching out to you because they get connected. You start discovering the right opportunities because you intuitively see that. You start impacting people and things that are happening because you're energetically engaging into it. There are so many methodologies, for example, that allow you to dig into what your subconscious actually is telling you, to know that. But then the methodologies also allow you to change those things that are happening in the subconscious, so that actually you can use that to start creating change in your life. And not just philosophically speaking in words, but energetically.
Amazing. Yeah, it's absolutely, it's this like mind-body connection. There's so much wisdom and so much information in the body. And once we can really tap into that. Johnny, thank you so much for sharing that. We'll link the video, and you want to share this as well with the recording on the website so that it's all there. And maybe if you authenticity test as the homework for tomorrow for people to tap into that, then it would be beautiful.